Jake LaMotta wasn't born into comfort. He came into the world on a hot July day in 1922, deep in the beating heart of New York City's Lower East Side, a place full of noise, thick accents, and people clawing their way up from nothing. His parents were Italian through and through. His mother, Elizabeth, was born in America but raised in the old traditions. His father, Giuseppe, everyone called him Joseph, had crossed the ocean from Messina, Sicily, bringing with him the fire of the old country and dreams bigger than his pockets could hold. For a while, the LaMotta's drifted, Philadelphia, then back to New York, finally settling in the Bronx. That's where the real story starts. Life wasn't easy in their cramped apartment. Money was tight, really tight. So tight that Jake's father had to get creative just to keep the lights on. And that's when little Jake became more than just a kid. His father turned him into entertainment. He'd gather the neighborhood men in the backyard or a nearby alley, throw a few crates down for makeshift seats, and tell Jake to fight other boys. Right there, in the dirt, fists flying. The men would throw coins into the ring of bodies, laughing and cheering while Jake swung for survival. His father would scoop up the coins, rent money. And that's the first ring Jake ever fought in. Not Madison Square Garden, not the bright lights, just bare fists, cracked pavement, and the sound of grown men hollering over a scrawny kid swinging like his life depended on it. Because in a way it did. Jake didn't grow up with a childhood. He grew up with bruises and bloody knuckles. And maybe that's why he never blinked when things got ugly in the ring, because he was raised in it. One of Jake's cousins ended up becoming rich from inventing the Chipwich ice cream sandwich. But Jake was built for something different. Ice cream wasn't going to save him. Fighting would. But it wasn't just the streets that shaped him. Trouble followed Jake, or maybe he chased it. As a teenager, he got caught trying to rob someone and was sent off to a reformatory upstate. Locked away, surrounded by other rough kids, Jake didn't sit still. He found boxing there, not in a shiny gym, but behind bars and concrete walls. That's where the fire turned into skill. When he got out, he was sharper, quicker, meaner. He tore through amateur fights like a storm, never losing once. By 19, in 1941, Jake LaMotta turned pro. World War II was raging, and almost every young man was being called to fight. Jake tried to enlist, but the army turned him down. A childhood ear surgery had messed up his hearing. The military didn't want him. But that rejection, that only added fuel. If they wouldn't let him fight their war, he'd fight his own in the ring. From a dusty back alley brawl to the roar of crowds and flashing cameras, Jake LaMotta was already becoming a storm no one could stop. He didn't ask for sympathy. He didn't wait for a break. He fought for every inch. And it all started with a boy swinging for pennies to keep a roof over his head. Jake LaMotta came into the middleweight scene like a punch in the mouth. 14 wins, no losses, and 1 draw in his first 15 fights. Not bad for a Bronx kid who learned to fight in alleyways and reform schools. He wasn't just winning. He was breaking through with that bulldog style, eating punches and giving back twice as much. And then came that night, September 24th, 1941, Cleveland, Ohio. His opponent, Jimmy Reeves, hometown hero, fast on his feet, slick. But Jake didn't come to dance. He came to break bones. The fight was brutal. It was close. But then came a moment that still leaves a sour taste in old-school fight fans' mouths. LaMotta dropped Reeves late in the fight. Hit him so hard he nearly ended it right there. The referee started the count, 1, 2, 3, but before he could hit 10, the bell rang. The fight was over. Reeves looked like he'd seen a ghost. But somehow, the judges, right there in Jimmy's backyard, gave Reeves the win on a split decision. That's when the fire really started. The crowd exploded, not with cheers, but fists. Fights broke out all around the ring. The arena turned into a madhouse. Grown men were punching each other, climbing over chairs, throwing whatever they could grab. The ring announcer was ducking. Security was helpless. And the arena's organist? He tried to calm the chaos by playing the Star-Spangled Banner. That only made it worse. It was a full-on riot, 20 minutes of pure bedlam. Police flooded in. Arrests were made. It wasn't just about boxing anymore. This was war. And in the middle of it all stood Jake LaMotta, robbed and raging. But Jake wasn't done. 1 month later, he was back in Cleveland. Same ring, same opponent. But this time, no robbery. Reeves won again, but clean. Jake swallowed it. No riots this time, just a bitter taste and more fuel on the fire. Then came the third fight, March 19th, 1943, Detroit, Michigan. This wasn't the same Jake. He came in slower, more calculated. The first 5 rounds were tight, but you could feel it. Jake was building toward something. By round 4, Reeves was unraveling, struggling to keep Jake off him. And then came the 6th. Jake unleashed a storm. He floored Reeves with a shot that dropped him for a flash. The referee barely counted before Reeves got back up, shaky but standing. Then, boom, Jake came back with a left hand straight to the chin. Reeves hit the canvas face first. It wasn't just a knockdown, it was a shut-off switch. Reeves blinked, shook his head, but it was over. The count reached 10. LaMotta had his revenge, and this time, there was no controversy, only silence and the thud of victory. He wasn't just a kid from the Bronx anymore. He was becoming something else, something dangerous. Jake LaMotta didn't just fight with his fists. He fought with old scars, street memories, and a chip on his shoulder the size of the Bronx Zoo. Jake LaMotta never liked easy. He didn't come up in the sweet science with silk robes and polished footwork. He came up throwing hands in alleys, swinging at shadows, chasing rent money with bloodied knuckles. So when Sugar Ray Robinson, slick, smooth, polished like a jazz record, made his debut at middleweight, Jake didn't blink. The fight was set, Madison Square Garden, October 2nd, 1942. Jake looked across the ring and didn't see his star. He saw a target. The bell rang, and in that very first round, LaMotta launched a shot that cracked through Robinson's defenses. Boom! Robinson hit the canvas. The crowd gasped. The Golden Boy was on the floor. For a second, Jake tasted what few had ever come close to, putting Sugar Ray down and out. But Ray got up, dusted himself off, and for the rest of those 10 rounds, he danced, jabbed, moved, and stole the fight. Robinson won a unanimous decision that night, but Jake had sent a message: I can hurt you, and I'm not going anywhere. Dude, one knockdown wasn't enough. He wanted a piece of Sugar Ray again, and fast. 4 months later, on February 5th, 1943, they met again in Detroit. Olympia Stadium was packed, and this time, Jake came with fire in his fists and payback in his eyes. The fight was rough from the start, but the 8th round was something else. Jake caught Robinson with a right to the head, then dug a left into his ribs. And just like that, Sugar Ray went flying through the ropes. The arena erupted. Robinson barely beat the count, saved only by the bell. But that round broke him. The rest of the fight, Jake chased him down like a man possessed, pounding him, cornering him, smothering the space. Robinson couldn't keep him away. He couldn't dance enough, couldn't jab enough. Jake wasn't just winning on the cards. He was taking Sugar Ray's 0. That night, Jake LaMotta handed Sugar Ray Robinson the first loss of his career. Nobody had ever done that. Nobody. But boxing never stops moving. And neither did Ray. Just 3 weeks later, they laced up again in Detroit, February 26th. Another 10 rounds. Another war. Jake knocked Ray down again in the 7th. Caught him with a left that made Robinson rethink his entire strategy. Robinson later admitted he stayed down a little longer on purpose, trying to clear his head. But he got up, and this time, he had just enough left. Jabs, uppercuts, angles, he squeaked out the win. Jake didn't buy it. He only got the decision because he was going into the army the next day. Jake would later say, maybe he was right. Maybe it didn't matter. What mattered was the score. 2-1, Robinson. But Jake wasn't done. Not even close. They fought again in 1945, February 23rd, back at Madison Square Garden. Another 10 rounds. Another decision for Sugar Ray. Close, sure, but the win went to Ray again. Jake swallowed it, walked out with his jaw clenched and his eyes cold. But that fire? Still burning. Then came the 5th fight, September 26th, 1945, Comiskey Park in Chicago. This time it was 12 rounds. This time was different. Jake brought it. He mauled. He cornered. He pushed Sugar Ray into places he didn't like to go. When the final bell rang, the crowd, nearly 15,000 strong, waited. The decision came. Split decision. Robinson again. The crowd lost it. Boos rained down. People were stunned. Newspapers tore into it the next day. Even Sugar Ray admitted it. This was the toughest fight I've ever had with LaMotta. Jake walked out that night without the win, but with something deeper. The respect of every fight fan who knew what they were watching. He wasn't slick. He wasn't fast. But Jake LaMotta was a bulldozer that kept coming, and Sugar Ray, maybe the greatest to ever lace gloves, couldn't shake him off. February 14th, 1951, Chicago Stadium. It was Valentine's Day, but there was no love in that ring. This was war. Jake LaMotta versus Sugar Ray Robinson for the 6th and final time. It wasn't just about titles anymore. It was about pride, about pain, about two men who had nothing left to prove, but still wanted to prove it anyway. This one was for the middleweight crown, scheduled for 15 rounds. LaMotta came in heavier, slower, but he still had that iron heart. He always did. Robinson, he was sharp, precise, a surgeon with gloves. If LaMotta was a bull, Robinson was the matador. And from the first bell, he danced around Jake, peppering him with shot after shot. But Jake wouldn't go down. By round 9, you could see the damage building on LaMotta's face. By round 11, it looked like he'd been through a car crash. His eyes were swelling shut. Blood trickled from his mouth. But Jake just kept walking forward, eating punches like they were breakfast. By round 13, it wasn't even a fight anymore. It was a beating. Robinson was unloading everything. Hooks, uppercuts, body shots that echoed like gunfire. The crowd wanted it to stop. The referee was watching close. Jake leaned against the ropes, absorbing a flurry of punches, defiant to the very end. His legs wouldn't quit. His will refused to break. But finally, the referee stepped in. TKO in round 13. Robinson raised his hand. LaMotta never hit the canvas, but he lost the title that night. They called it the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, and the name fit. LaMotta didn't cry, didn't make excuses. He took the loss like he took the punches head on. Then he did something wild. He moved up to light heavyweight, but the magic was fading. Jake dropped his first fight at the new weight against Bob Murphy. Then he lost a close one to Norman Hayes. A draw with Gene Hairston followed. He wasn't outclassed, but he wasn't the same either. Still, LaMotta wasn't the type to stay down. He went back and fought each of them again. And this time he beat them all, one by one, decision after decision. That old fire was still there, faint but burning. Then came December 31st, 1952, a date LaMotta never forgot. Jake stepped in against Danny Nardico. No titles, no rematch hype, just another fight. But what happened shocked everyone. In round 7, Nardico landed a perfect right hand. Jake went down, for the first and only real time in his entire career. The crowd gasped. LaMotta scrambled to his feet. He finished the round, barely holding on as Nardico trapped him in the corner and pounded away. When the bell rang, Jake's corner had seen enough. They stopped it. The bull was done. After that, Jake took time off, tried to shake off the years. In early 1954, he came back swinging, knocked out Johnny Pretzi in 4 rounds, then Al McCoy in the very first. But it wasn't meant to last. On April 14th, 1954, Jake went up against Billy Kilgore. Fought hard, thought he did enough to win, but the judges gave it a Kilgore split decision. That was the final straw. Jake looked around, saw the smoke fading, the spotlight dimming, and he walked away. He wasn't undefeated. He wasn't the fastest or the flashiest, but Jake LaMotta was a fighter through and through. The kind who never stopped coming, even when everything told him to. The kind who went toe-to-toe with the greatest and refused to fall. He took beatings most men couldn't survive and kept swinging, because that's who Jake was, a man who didn't know how to quit. When Jake LaMotta finally hung up his gloves, he didn't exactly ride off into the sunset. He stepped out of the ring and straight into the wild world outside it. You'd think a man who'd gone toe-to-toe with Sugar Ray Robinson 6 times might finally want peace. But peace wasn't in Jake's blood. Not then, not ever. He opened a bar down on Collins Avenue in Miami Beach and ran it like he ran a fight, tight, loud, full of heat. People came to drink, but they stayed to be around him. The Bronx Bull was still famous, still tough, still dangerous. You didn't just walk into Jake's bar. You stepped into his arena, but trouble always seemed to find him. In 1958, the law came crashing down. Jake was arrested, accused of introducing an underage girl to men at his club. He said he was innocent, swore it. Still, he was convicted and thrown onto a chain gang for 6 brutal months. Jake LaMotta, once the middleweight champ of the world, was now swinging a pickaxe in the Florida sun, surrounded by criminals. He paid the price and walked away carrying another scar. Only this one didn't come from a fist. Then in 1960, the ghost from his fighting days came knocking again. The U.S. Senate was digging into the mob's role in boxing. And guess who they called? Jake stepped into a courtroom, not a ring, and told the world the truth. Yes, I threw that fight with Billy Fox. Not for money, not for fame. He did it because the mob controlled the game. And if you want a shot at the title, you had to play dirty first. It was a dark chapter, but Jake didn't hide from it. He looked them in the eye and told it straight. And somehow, LaMotta still wasn't finished with the spotlight. He popped up in movies, over 15 films, including The Hustler with Paul Newman and Jackie Gleason, playing a bartender with that same unbreakable look in his eyes. He even got laughs on TV, making guest appearances in Car 54. Where Are You? Trading punches for punchlines. But Jake never lost his love for the fight. Any fight. In the Bronx, where it all began, he formed the Jake LaMotta All-Star Baseball team, gathering neighborhood kids and turning a dusty field into a small slice of glory. It wasn't Yankee Stadium, but it was his. And in 1965, Jake traded gloves for a tux and hit the stage, playing Big Jewel in Guys and Dolls in New York. He stood next to seasoned actors like Alan King and Jerry Orbach, delivering lines instead of jabs. 15 performances, one standing ovation after another. The crowd loved him. Maybe not as much as the fight crowd, but enough to keep the fire burning. As the years passed, Jake slowed down. He bounced between Miami and Bisbee, Arizona, chasing the sun in stories, rubbing shoulders with comedians like Doug Stanhope, still looking for the spotlight, even if it was smaller now. But one thing never changed: his chin. They said Jake LaMotta had the best chin in boxing history. And it wasn't just hype. He took beatings most men wouldn't survive. In the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, when Sugar Ray unloaded hell on him, the crowd gasped. No man can take this kind of punishment. But Jake did. He never went down. His secret? He rolled with punches, took the steam off them, and just kept coming. He lived like that too, rolling with life's punches, always getting back up. Jake wasn't just a fighter. He was a storm, a force, a man who refused to be broken. By fists, by jail, by time, or by regret. He once said, "No son of a bitch ever knocked me off my feet." That held true until Danny Nardico in 1952. Nardico clipped him with a right in the 7th. Jake hit the ropes, dropped, got back up. But that night, for the first and only real time, the Bronx Bull didn't answer the bell. Even then, he didn't complain. He never asked for sympathy. Jake LaMotta took his hits in the ring and out, and stood tall through them all. He lived wild. He lived loud. And he lived like a fighter till the very end. Jake LaMotta was a storm that never really passed. Even when the crowds were gone and the gloves were off, chaos still followed him like a shadow. He had lived a hard life inside the ring. But what happened outside the ropes? That's where things got even messy, eh? From the very start, Jake didn't walk the straight road. As a young boy, before anyone knew his name, he found himself locked up in a reformatory. Trouble was a magnet, and Jake never seemed able to pull away. He was wild, angry, and didn't know how to switch off the rage that had made him a champion. And that same fire came with a cost. He was married 7 times, and not the storybook kind of love either. Jake himself admitted to things that still make your stomach turn. He hit his wives. He once raped a woman. He even said he nearly beat a man to death during a robbery. He carried pain, and sometimes he passed that pain to others. It's a truth that stains his legacy. No excuses, no sugarcoating. And just when it seemed like Jake's life might settle, tragedy came crashing through the door. In February of 1998, Jake's oldest son, Jake Jr., died from liver cancer. Just 7 months later, in September, his younger son Joseph died in the crash of Swissair Flight 111. 2 sons, gone, in the same year. How do you even stand up after that? But somehow, Jake did what he always did. He kept going. Bruised, broken, but still breathing. And the LaMotta name lived on in other ways. His nephew, John LaMotta, stepped into the boxing world in 2001, swinging fists in the Golden Gloves tournament. Later, He'd become an actor, playing Duke on the hit show Frasier, running a bar that, funny enough, wasn't far from the real ones Jake used to haunt. Another nephew, William Lustig, found his lane behind the camera, making horror movies and building a name of his own in Hollywood. Jake also had 4 daughters, including Christy, born to his second wife, Vicky, the woman who stood beside him through the ups, downs, and blood-splattered chaos. Another daughter, Stephanie, came from his 4th marriage. And then came Denise Baker, his fiancée of many years, who finally married him on January 4th, 2013, when Jake was 91. Jake LaMotta got married again at 91. You can't make that up. He stayed in the spotlight however he could, talking to crowds, signing autographs, selling books, telling his story, the real one, not the polished version. In 2012, he tried to bring that story to the stage in a live show called Lady and the Champ, but the show flopped. The New York Times called it a bizarre debacle. Still, you gotta give it to him. Even at 90, Jake was still swinging, still trying, still stepping into new arenas. That same year, he became the subject of a documentary by Greg Oliver, featuring none other than Mike Tyson, plus a cast of athletes, actors, and family members. At the same time, a sequel to Raging Bull was in the works. MGM wasn't happy and dragged Jake into court, saying he didn't have the rights. The case got settled, and the new movie was retitled The Bronx Bull, fitting for a man who never stopped pushing back. The film starred William Forsythe as Jake, Paul Sorvino as his father, with a lineup that included Joe Mantegna, Tom Sizemore, Penelope and Miller, Natasha Henstridge, Joey Diaz, and Ray Wise. It wasn't a blockbuster, but it was Jake's way of telling the rest of his story, his way, no apologies. Then, on September 19th, 2017, the final bell rang. Jake LaMotta died in a Florida nursing home from complications of pneumonia. He was 95 years old, a man who had taken more punches than most could imagine, in and out of the ring, was finally at rest. Jake LaMotta was never clean, never quiet, never safe. He was wild. He was raw. He was human. He was a fighter long before he ever put on gloves, and long after he took them off. Jake LaMotta didn't live life by the rules. He fought it tooth and nail, in the ring, in love, in pain, in madness. He wasn't just the Bronx Bull. He was the fight. Every scar on his face told a story. Every mistake he owned, every punch he took, and every brutal round he survived made him unforgettable. He was loved. He was hated. He was never ignored. In the end, LaMotta showed us something raw and real. That being tough isn't about never falling. It's about standing up, round after round, even when the world begs you to stay down. Jake LaMotta didn't go down easy, and his story never will. Thanks for watching. If this story hit you like a right hook, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more unbelievable true tales from the fight game. Until next time, stay sharp, stay strong, and remember, legends are made in blood.